Baran, as a younger Kurd who has grown up in Australia, your recent visit to Rojava, the Democratic Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria, must have been quite a moving experience. After all, the Rojava revolution has been very much the international face of the Kurdish freedom movement, and it's exemplified the core principles of that movement: democratic confederalism, ethnic and religious pluralism, the empowerment of women, and ecological responsibility. So how did what you saw match your expectations?
Well, Peter, also thank you for having us here today. Going back to, I basically told everyone that there is no word to describe it because you got to live it and feel it and connect with it. But as a younger generation born in Australia and having roots back to Kurdistan, and especially in that struggle, when we went there, it was emotional because throughout your childhood, all the struggles you've been seeing, not just your family, but friends and community, giving all those struggles, seeing it in person and seeing the result was a big emotion for us as well. Because as you know, as our viewers will also be aware, the region was a very big conflict region. People had faced massacres, death, unfortunately, mothers crying, children have lost their lives. But this struggle had led to a result where people are living democratically, peace, and able to express their views and represent themselves. So I'm proud to say, seeing the Rojava administration, Autonomous administration, coming to this place, coming from basically nearly from nothing to something is a big emotional happiness for us as well. Both myself, Ismet, and our other colleagues who had went there, David and Sam and Elise, we saw the practice of it. Yes, here we talk about the theory, we talk about the Rojava and what it is, what's its values, but able to see in practice and able to see that it actually works gives so much hope for us, for not just for Rojava, but for the whole region as well, to allow it to be a symbol to not just Middle East, but to the world.
So if you were to pick out one aspect or one of these values which were obvious to you, which one would you pick as your top one from what you saw?
I'll probably go with ecological. As you know, it's what brings people together. And we were in the ground and speaking to not just the co-chairs but committee members. Everyone's talking about nature and ecology. When we were over there, we saw solar panels in villages. Even here, you don't even see that much, especially in the Middle East, somewhere there where economically it's very hard to get one. You saw villages able to have solar panels. We saw green spaces. We heard the new project that's coming into Rojava. We sat with one of the local groups known as Green Group, and they were saying that they want to turn Rojava into green, and through this they want to build more forests, because they were saying that when you build more green space, especially forests, it doesn't just allow animals and good for the nature, but it allows people's mental health as well. It allows people to connect to those nature and land. And after the invasion of Turkey in Afrin and other areas, lots of forestation has been massacred, especially the sacred olive trees, which is very sacred to Kurdish culture as well as other cultures as well. They've been stolen or destroyed for their own economic benefit. And what we saw there was a younger generation, especially women, planting new olive trees and planting them, as well as with the olive oil, allowing it to be medical reasons, not just for themselves, but as well as economically as well, able to sell that to overseas as well and gain that economic benefit, which they can help those projects because they are facing economic sanctions, which is making it hard for those ecological projects to actually happen. And another factor is about women's representation. As you're aware, it makes up 50% of the administration is women, run by women, and you have the co-chair system. And when we were over there, we didn't just see Kurdish people, but we saw Arab communities, Yazidi communities, Christian communities, as well as youth representatives, and wherever we saw female representation. Not just there as the sake of having a female over there, but you actually saw it in practice. You can see the power that women have. And something funny happened is when we were sitting down, we saw the men bringing the tea, men bringing the food, and the women giving the orders, which showed that you can see the practice of it, not just for the sake of it, saying, oh, let's just have a woman representation. Yep, there's a female over there. Yep, we've done our job. It's not like that. You actually have to show in practice, and seeing that in practice makes us so proud to say that we are living our values.
So what you're saying is that it's well beyond the formal inclusion or representation of women, you actually are seeing some sort of deep-going cultural change here. How does this reflect itself in the behaviour and the confidence of younger women that you met in Rojava?
For example, I'll give this example. As the younger generation under Assad, especially, when they were a child, they've been fed with that oppression, especially women. That women should not go to school, women should not do this, blah, blah, vice versa. And when they started to grow up and they saw all these opportunities, obviously it was something that they're not used to as well. But the administration has women committees that go and reach out to those women and say that, look, your job isn't just to sit at home or look after family or obey your husband or whatever. We're out of that mentality. Come, we can help you. They have education programs to teach these women, provide the economic support in any way possible to allow those females who might have been stuck with that mindset to kind of express themselves. And we saw this in Raqqa as well. Unfortunately, with the ISIS controlling Raqqa for many years, many females have been fed with this ideology that women cannot do anything without men, and most of the women felt that this relief when the YPJ, especially when the female forces came in and freed and liberated the city. Again, you still had some people who are supporting the ISIS ideology, and the administration had worked with the local women over there, especially with the Arab community and the Arab female women, where they reach out to those females over there and say, no, you don't have to worry about it, because they probably still have that fear that, oh, would something happen to me? And it's not easy, because throughout the entire years they've been fed with this oppression, and all of a sudden they're free. It does impact their mental health as well. But what's good about it is that the administration, even though it's a Kurdish administration, the Kurdish administration doesn't go to Arab women and say, do this, this, this. They allow the Arab woman, someone from their own community, to connect with them. And when they see that, the females, they're like, oh, look, we can have representation. Look, there's an Arab female member in the committee. Why can't I do it? And that's why the Arab committee, the female Arab committee, they reached out to those women, and they have education program, especially to the younger generation as well, and teaching them the importance of a female having an education, connecting them to the committee and administration and being involved, holding forums and conferences, allowing a actual female representation, despite them being from other ethnic groups.
So one of the groups specifically that you met up with is the Zenobia Arab Women's Union, and they must be in Raqqa, I mean, where it's predominantly Arab. What is the background of the women activists here? Did they, obviously, were they people who were already involved in some a degree of struggle against ISIS when it controlled Raqqa, or are there people who have just come up from the community since the liberation of Raqqa? Who are the people? Who are the Arab women activists who are in the front line here?
Oh, as far as I know, Peter, I feel like the Arab women, they've always had that struggle, despite them, even during Assad or throughout ISIS as well, because it's not easy being, for a female especially, it's already hard, and a man telling you what to do especially, you still have that struggle. But I think after the liberation of Raqqa and the region, it allowed them a safe space to actually portray their voices. Yes, people do know that the Kurdish women have led this, but again, with those Kurdish women, there were Arab women, Yazidis, Assyrians, and we can even see this now as well in the Kurdish women forces. It's not just Kurds there as well. There are Arab, Yazidis, Assyrians, and Christian. But after the liberation of Raqqa, it was important that the community represents themselves. This is the view the administration always had. And then the Arab women had found a safe place, and they're allowed to represent themselves now. And I feel like now they're part of the administration's struggle as well. And what's the struggle? It's about equality, as you mentioned, social justice, and women's freedom and democracy and peace. This is an equality. This is what the Zenobian women are doing. They're representing their own community, but more important, representing the women. And I wish and I hope one day they can maybe come here, or we can go visit them one more time and actually ask these questions and see the process that they've taken from ISIS mentality system to now a administration where allows them to have that representation. And it's very emotional to see that there are women are able to express themselves. And unfortunately, they were showing us some of the pictures of all the martyrs that have lost their life for the struggle. And it showed that the struggle didn't just start in Raqqa, but as well as before as well, during all these other regimes.
Well, definitely. I mean, I raised this in my discussion with David Shoebridge. Raqqa, in a sense, is the place where the potential of the Rojava revolution gets tested in an extraordinary way, because it's predominantly Arab and Kurds are minority there, right? So if it proves to work here, if it proves to be able to empower women and encourage good peaceful relations between the different ethnic groups, then it means it can work in the other parts of Syria. Yeah. So I want to move now to another place you went to, Kobani, which is, of course, a very, very important place from the point of view of not only the Kurdish freedom movement, but, the whole movement for liberation from the tyranny of Islamic State in the region, right? I understand you went to Kobani. Can you tell our audience a little bit, one, about the significance of Kobani as a site of struggle, and secondly, describe what you saw there?
Well, Peter, I'll just go back one and update the viewers as well. I might be aware, but Kobani was a symbolic, historical moment for Kurds especially, because it was the moment of whether Kurds would be alive or basically dead. And ISIS and the people who supported ISIS over there did whatever they can to minimize the Kurdish voice and the Kurdish struggle, especially in Kobani. But the benefit of Kobani that the people didn't understand was Kobani was a people's movement. It wasn't just a political party. It was the people, the Kurdish people's movement, and a movement of women and youth especially, and allowing other ethnic and religious groups to express themselves. So basically, when Kobani was under siege, it was kind of 2 or 3 streets left of Kobani. And if those 3 streets were gone, that was it. But the people resisted, and the back of the coalition as well. ISIS was pushed away. But Kobani was led by women. Women's movement, women forces had led the movement and struggled and defeated ISIS. When Kobani was defeated, it became a symbol and hope for the Kurds to kind of unite, and other ethnic groups to come and unite as well, and totally kick out ISIS from all parts of the region, especially in Rojava, an autonomous administration region. When we went to Kobani, obviously it was very emotional, and you probably see in the pictures as well, when there's a sign that says, "Big heart and welcome to Kobani." And when me and Councillor Ismet, when we got out, we were very emotional to see that sign. We took pictures and we shed some tears as well, because especially for Ismet and myself and for our communities here, in Town Hall, every day there was nearly a protest. And yourself had also been there, and we thank you for your support and the Socialist Alliance and Green Left Weekly. And as you probably even see here, Hands Off Rojava shows the proof that the people had been united during those times. But the community was emotionally very impacted because they want to help their people over there. And ISIS, ISIS, they don't take any hostage. They just brutally murder people and then rape the women and sell them as sex slaves. But seeing the struggle, seeing the victories of the struggle and seeing your people over there was big emotional for us. And when we were walking into the street, we were expecting Kobani to still be like under rubble and everything's destroyed and very low. But it wasn't like that. There was social life. There was restaurants. There was schools. There was kids going to school and university. There was music in the streets. And we're like, are we in Kobani? Because it's been about like 12 years.
Where's the rubble?
Yeah, it's been about 12 years. But we were still expecting didn't expect Kobani to look like this. We were walking, we met with co-chairs and other representatives over there, and then they took us to which they called the Museum of Kobani, which is not a closed area, but an open space. We walk in, they preserved the streets, those 3 streets that was left during the siege, and they were showing us the buildings. Each building had its own story, Peter. There was one building that was saying there was 80 fighters over there, and 80... Kurdish fighters, they were especially made out of women. There was 80, but only 3 survived. And it was very significant, that building, because ISIS really wanted that building because it was such a high rise. You could basically see the whole region, the whole city. So they really wanted to get that building, but the forces, the YPG and YPJ forces, did whatever they can to protect it. We saw the suicide cars that had exploded. There was this tree that was standing there, and for those who've watched the movie Kobani, you will know that an ISIS had sneaked into the city and went up that street and at night was kind of sniping the fighters, Kurdish fighters from there. And we saw that tree as well. And we saw the people who survived that. We spoke to the mothers, the youth who were a child but now a teenager now. They shared their story, and they were still expressing as if it just happened yesterday. And you can really feel the sense, you can feel the energy of the screams, of the bombshells and the fighting. And then what was other extraordinary was, Peter, was that we were basically here with Kobani, and right next to me was basically Turkey.
Yes, that's right.
And
it's just next, right on the border.
You're right on the border, and then they were telling us that how close it was basically to death, because if that street was gone, it wasn't Turkey that was going to protect them. So if they did whatever they can to protect themselves, Peter, because that was their last hope. That's what determined the death and the life of Kurds and their future. But when we're sitting with the Kurds, Peter, yes, we were talking about the past, but they always want to talk about the future. They're like, yes, we did the past is painful, but now it's time to focus on the future. They were telling us the projects they were going to do, they were telling us what they're offering to people. A new Kobani University opened, which benefits the youth with the education as well, and many of the youth are now either studying doctor, law, or media, and then they were talking about the open music schools for people. And then they were talking about the new green forest projects they want to do, and then the new water projects they want to do, and ensure that it's safe for the environment. But hearing all these projects makes me really proud that, for example, despite being in the Middle East, the heart of the conflict, despite sanctions and the ongoing attacks by Jolani, or even from Turkey as well, they still want to help their community. Even they're unsure. Kobani was saying, any minute there could be an invasion, any minute there could be an attack. But this should not stop us from working together. It should not stop us from achieving our goals in the future. We do whatever we can to protect our people, and we trust our people's struggle, because we want Kobani from the terror of ISIS through the struggle of people, and we will lead the victory of Kobani and the administration and Rojava to the future with peace and democracy and equality with our people.
So I think it's quite, because it's a few years ago, the Battle of Kobani, how many freedom fighters were martyred in this struggle? I mean, what's the scale of this heroic struggle?
We had the honor and the chance to visit the Martyrs Cemetery as well, Peter, and they were saying about 12,000 martyrs just in Kobani. And then when we were walking, we were reading the coffins, and then they were saying that it's all part of the world that was there, Peter, because yes, there was Kurdish people over there, but there was also international left supporters over there from Europe, from South America and Africa and Asia, and even the Middle East, or parts of Middle East, especially in Australia as well. As you're aware, there were the 2 martyrs from Australia who went and fought against ISIS. And the scale of young people over there, Peter, it was very emotional for us, because those youth and those young ones shouldn't be under the ground. They should be having a family, pursuing their career, living in peace and love with their family. But their struggle will always be remembered, not just by Kurds, but all people around the world who believe in democracy and peace. And then they were also mentioning that even though there was 12,000 martyrs, there were still new martyrs coming every day because of the attacks from ISIS cells, from the conflict that happened in Tishrin Jam, with the ongoing, the previous airstrikes from Turkey as well. And they were showing the civilians who were there as well. And what hurt us most was, Peter, there were these 2 couples, a mother and a father, who had lost their lives from an airstrike. And they were saying that now they have an orphanage child, which shows that the scale of, despite me mentioning how, yes, administration there's peace within the people, and it might sound all good, but there's still the reality of another horrific attack that could happen. And the administration has been mentioning this to us and the world as well. They want to have peace. They want to have a democratic system. They want to allow to have dialogue with their neighboring countries, with al-Shara, with Turkey, and with neighboring countries, able to kind of de-escalate any sort of conflict, to come to a conclusion. And there was one phrase that I heard from a Kurdish member, which I really liked and I want to share. She was saying that we rather fight in a table than to fight on land. In table you can fight, argue, that's part of democracy as well. But fighting in land, no one would win. At the end of the day, if through violence, through war, no one has won and no one would win. It will just cause casualties on both sides as well. It will just lead to the death of younger people and the tears of mothers. So that cemetery, when we visited the Kobani cemetery, it was a very big thing. You understand more of the scale and kind of see what the city had actually been going through.
The people of Rojava have now been, the revolution is more than 13 years old, right? And through all this period, they have had to be prepared to defend, and they've had to actively defend themselves. Currently through the Syrian Democratic Forces, but before through the YPJ and YPG. And the young people who are out there risking their lives to be part of this defense force, are they a conscripted force, or is it voluntary if they want to join the SDF, for instance, and the other defense organizations? And is it free, or is it conscripted? You are compelled to do it.
Through my understanding over there, Peter, it was mentioned that it was all voluntary. The administration doesn't go up to youth and say you're going to join the army and serve. It's not like that. But again, the youth who are joining the SDF is not because they want to attack, but it's because they want to defend themselves. Because at the end of the day, if another group like ISIS who comes to your area or region, you should be able to defend yourself. And then it's not just towards just Kurdish people, but allowing, because the SDF is made out of different unities of army forces in the region. YPG, YPJ, you got the Arab forces as well, you got the Christian, you got the Yazidis, and then they're all coming together under one branch, kind of uniting under one branch to not to attack but to defend themselves. And this is something that mission always mentioned. We're not on anyone's land. We don't want to attack, but we want to defend. And through our view over there, what we saw was it wasn't a military region. It's not like you have army forces everywhere and tanks. It's not like that. You can see the presence. It's very free. It's like basically walking the streets down here. Yep, there are checkpoints that are going every couple of kilometers, but it's not heavily armed as well. And then you see people walk. You don't see people walking with guns or anything like that. And it's very, very calm. But yeah, it is a voluntary thing, and this is something, again, not to attack but to defend themselves.
It must have an impact on, say, a generation growing up, though. I mean, you imagine like, young people growing up here in Australia or many other parts of the world, you're making plans for all sorts of things, your education, future job, families, whatever. And here you have a generation that has had to be conscious that there's the need to defend themselves. And they're also besieged. There are the sanctions, the difficulty getting in and out of northeast Syria. When you spoke to younger people in Rojava, how did you find the state of their morale, their hopes, their confidence in the education system and maybe their future careers? What were their feelings, and how did that strike you?
Well, Peter, their moral is high because they know that their struggle and their fight wasn't for nothing. They've seen the rules and they want to continue this. They want to broaden up the region and kind of be a symbol to the whole world. But this was something I was mentioning with some of the youth on the way over there as well. I was saying that, like, what different world? It's maybe like 22 hours or 24 hours through flight, but you have two different totally worlds. For example, here you see the youth going out, enjoying their life, having a career, stressing about an exam or stressing about all these small things. But over there, they're not stressing because they know that stress or fear will bring no hope to them. Fear that have not faced or seen them have any fear. Yes, they're worried about the future, but they are not scared because they say we rely on our struggle, and what we are doing is right for humanity. There's nothing for us to be scared of. But they are very hopeful for their future, and then they work collaboratively with the administration. Administration provides any resources that they can, for example, through education or social activities as well, allowing the youth to kind of connect with the outside world as well. And this is something, the planning that had been going on. We sat with the youth representative in Kamishlo, for example. They were saying they have kind of like sister groups with Europe and other parts, and you see the universities, for example, working with, they were saying that they work with some countries in South America and Philippines as well. So they maybe in the future they think we can even have youth exchange. But the youth is not like maybe other parts of the Middle East. Youth tend to think that, oh, there's no future for me here, I need to go to another country, or right. Europe, where there's, or even the US or other parts for hope for job. But in the administration, it wasn't like that. I kind of asked some of the youth that, oh, look, you have a degree, like, would you persuade, like, kind of go overseas to get your master's or gain the experience? They're like, well, obviously we would like to go overseas to see the world and try to understand a bit more, but this is my homeland. I want to come back here and help my people. It isn't because they trust the administration, they trust the people's struggle. But if they didn't have the trust with the administration, if they didn't trust their future, then yes, you're right, most of the youth are cautious about their future. But this isn't something myself or others, I don't think we have seen.
Did you strike any examples of younger Kurds from the diaspora coming back to help in the rebuilding of Rojava? Are there instances of that?
Yeah, there were projects in Europe, especially with youth-led and communities over there, where they want to help the administration through education-wise, where they hold conferences in Europe, in the universities over there. And I believe there was one of the co-chairs of the youth representative was saying that they're planning to go to France, for example, to join that conference over there. And then there was some youth who were part of like the more of the artwork sector. They were saying that they have exhibitions of Kurdish artworks in Europe. And this is something that we want to do here as well. Connect the Australian society and Australian youth with the youth over there, and exchange views and see the different worlds. And this is something that myself and maybe other youth around the world are planning to do, because we want to share this value, we want to share this richness, culture with the outside world through the Kurdish artworks, music, language, and as well as learn from one another.
Now, the Rojava authorities are deeply committed to pursuing a negotiated settlement and peace and unification with the new Damascus regime. Difficult as that is, and probably concerning as it is at various points in time, particularly when you see things like the attacks on the Druze in Sueda, or the pressure that's been put on Kurdish communities in Aleppo, for instance. So they're committed to this. What is the basis of this? What is the potential that might come if there's a successful negotiation? Is it possible, for instance, that the Afrin, the part of northeast Syria that has been occupied by Turkey and its associated militias, could it be returned to Rojava out of this? What about the people who have been displaced? Can they return home? What about the people who are Kurdish people who are living in Damascus and Aleppo? You know, what could potentially come out of this process? And, it's a complicated question here, what has been the impact of the latest peace initiatives by imprisoned Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan to disarm the PKK guerrillas in Turkey? What has been the impact of that on the prospects for a negotiated solution in Syria?
Well, Peter, we hope that the peace process on both sides in Syria and in Turkey does come out in a good way for the region especially. And yes, the administration is always willing to sit down and negotiate, but again, this is the steps that the HTS, the new government, needs to take, Jolani needs to take. It's still early stages to hear and to mention what negotiations have been approved or what's going to happen, but there has been some sort of talks that yes, the displaced people will be able to return. And same instance, for example, the invasion of Turkish-backed rebels might withdraw, and then the administration will take over, and vice versa. But again, it's too early to mention, and we hope that both Jolani and the administration will come to a consensus about for the future of the people. But Rojava always mentioned they've said that they're not gonna kind of disarm and kind of give all their lands back to the Syrian government, because a lot of sacrifices have been given. And again, it's that trust. How much can you still trust Jolani? Because we know the background and the history of Jolani, and then the attacks he's done in Suwaida and towards the Druze and the Alawite communities. And then his new legal system is all made up of men, and there's no representation of other ethnic groups, or especially women. So again, the administration is precautious. My view is that they are precautious, but they are ready to sit down and take those steps. And going back to the other question of the peace process in Turkey with Mr. Öcalan, Dem Party, and the Turkish authorities, again, we hope that the peace process comes out, the outcome comes out good, because again, 45, 46 years of conflict towards these people, for the people. But the Kurds have been facing more than that, more than 110 years nearly have been facing this. And the Kurds don't want to mention, it's not about land, it's about basic human rights, your language, your identity, your culture, able to express it without the fear of being either kidnapped or oppressed or jailed, as we see in Turkey and other parts in the region. And yesterday, we've all heard and saw the news of 25 PKK guerrillas have mentioning that they withdraw from Turkey to kind of a second step to take for the peace negotiation. The first step was of mentioning of the disarmament and the symbolic burning of weapons in Bashar, Kurdistan. And then now it's kind of to see what Turkey is going to take steps, because especially Kurds in Turkey are saying that, well, yes, the PKK has taken all their steps, but now what is Turkey going to do? And in the coming days, there's going to be a meeting between them, co-chairs and members, with President Erdogan, to see, kind of to discuss what steps are going to be taken. And I hope these meetings and these steps do lead to a more peaceful and democratic region, Peter. Because as a young youth, I've met probably around like 7 or 8. I've started to hear about our struggle and seeing on the news of all the people who have either been killed or assassinated, murdered, or the genocides or the conflicts that are going in the region. And people have had enough, especially mothers on both sides, nor Turkish or Kurdish mothers want their children to be buried on the ground. And I think it's time has come for a rooted, democratic, peaceful system for the region, especially for Kurds, because peace does need to come to these lands.
Thank you, Baran, for sharing what must have been an amazing experience, but also your thoughtful reflections on what you saw and experienced.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.